Manisha. Unmute yourself, Manisha. Unmute yourself. Not audible. Not audible, Manisha. Yes, now audible.
Priti, I've joined your channel.
Yes, Didi, now we are going to start.
Priti, I'm in.
Okay, Didi, now we are going to start.
Namaste, madam.
Manisha, you're not audible. Please unmute yourself.
You have to remove your earphone. Because
You can remove that also. Yes, now go ahead. Please.
Am I audible, Di?
Yes, you are audible. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Di. Good evening, all of you. Sahana bhavatu, sahano bhunaktu, sahaviryam karvavahe, tejas nidavaditamastu, ma vidvishavahe. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. I welcome all of you in this 5 days online workshop on conflict resolution and peace research, issues and methods, organized by Department of Political Science, Vasanta College for Women, Rajghat, Varanasi, in association with Department of Political Science, DAB PG College, Varanasi. First of all, I request our patron, Professor Alka Singh, Madam Principal, Vasanta College for Women, Rajghat, to deliver her welcome address and bless us. Alka, ma'am, please.
Thank you, Dr. Manisha. Good evening, one and all. It is such a pleasure to be on this platform where we have a speaker of a stature that does not give me enough words to express myself. I feel so privileged and I'm so happy to welcome our very own Professor Priyankar Upadhyaya from the Banaras Hindu University. And sir, it is my extreme pleasure to welcome you. We had been looking for an opportunity to connect you with the college, and I'm so very grateful to Department of Political Science of DAV PG College and Vasanta College, which managed to loop you into this program with your busy schedule. I'm so very grateful, sir, for your presence today, and I'm sure that the beginning of this workshop established today will go a long way, because it is indeed a milestone in the field that they venture out. On behalf of the entire fraternity of Vasanta College for Women and the Department of Political Science, DAV, and my very own political science from Vasanta College for Women, I welcome you and look forward to a very intriguing session with you. Thank you so much, sir, for being with us. Thank you. And I also welcome all the participants who have joined this program today, who had the vision of joining, and we all look forward to a very interesting conversation, dialogue, as well as a lecture throughout the workshop. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you, madam, for your encouraging words. Professor S.D. Singh, sir, Principal DAV College, sir, is very busy and he is in a very urgent work in Mumbai. Hence, he is unable to join us in this session, but he has sent his blessings for us. Now, I welcome Dr. Punita Pathak, Assistant Professor, Department of Political Science, Vasanta College, to present the theme of the workshop. Punita.
Thank you, Manisha. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Thank you. Good evening all. Good evening, respected Professor Priyankar Upadhyaya, sir, UNESCO Chair, Professor of Peace Studies, MCPR, Professor Alka Singh, ma'am, Principal, Vasanta College for Men, Rajghat, Professor S.D. Singh, DAV, Principal, DAV College, and senior faculty members, colleagues, and dear students. I welcome you all in this 5 days online workshop on conflict resolution and peace issues and methods. It's my privilege to be a part of this organizing team of this 5 days workshop on conflict resolution and peace research, jointly organized by Department of Political Science and DAV PG College. To start about conflict resolution and peace, it is an applied academic study with a history of over the past 50 years and has come of age, especially in the post-Cold War era. To explain conflicts, we can mention that these are basically inherent in human relations and can occur between individuals or groups, states, nations, over various issues such as religion, race, language, beliefs, values, identity, scarcity, or even unequal distribution of resources, contestation of central power, or colonized people's quest for self-determination. In fact, human needs theorists such as Australian professor of conflict resolution, John Burton, claim that conflict occur when certain fundamental human needs and desires are unmet. These range from daily needs such as water and food to control over resources such as oil, forests, arable and grazing lands. Even the United Nations Charter has stated that the UN was founded to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. Drastically, there have been over 250 armed conflicts since the charter was signed in 1946 and is being constantly been occurring in the various regions of the world. In the last 2 decades, an increasing number of so-called international conflicts have actually been intergroup or communal conflicts within one country. For example, we can take Ireland, Sri Lanka, Bosnia, Kosovo, Rwanda, Chechnya, and the most recent one, the Russia's military action against Ukraine. In most of these cases, the issue in dispute has been the sovereignty of a particular ethnic group or region and or the equality of these ethnic groups in the political, social, and economic structures of their own societies. The international conflict resolution is concerned with processes of removing tensions between states or maintaining them at levels consistent with continued peaceful pursuit by states of their goals, whether it was individual or collective, usually by a third party. So in order to combat the conflicts, the application of peace is often applied. Usually people implicitly assume that stripped from all particularities and worldly consideration, the abstract notion of peace are intuitive and obvious, and frequently used typology of peace are offered in the theoretical work of Johann Galtung and his theories, according to which peace can be interpreted in necessarily, like we can see that he has interpreted it into three categories. Firstly, peace can be interpreted as the absence of bloodshed and war, which is termed as negative peace, as it refers to the negation of overt violence. Secondly, peace can be understood as positive social relationships, which has been characterized by fraternity, solidarity, harmony, which is referred to as positive peace. And thirdly, we can see that peace pertains to a socio-political order where equality and justice prevail, and known as structural peace, as it seeks to overturn social systems that perpetuate structural discrimination. The academic study and practice of conflict resolution have much in common with the role of peacekeeping in international conflict management. Further, in the course of conflict resolution and peace, the concept of human development is being emphasized as the process of expanding human choices like economic welfare, human resources expansion, and identifying the basic needs of society. It is in form of equal accession to opportunities and being consistent in form of taking responsibility regarding future generation and sustainable productivity. And to achieve this, the human security should be omnipresent in the society. Human security is the ability to protect humans, governments, both of them. And so it consists of providing main and the basic needs of human as well as the non-physical aspects. Quantitative aspects consist supplying the basic physical needs, the most important of which are food, home, education, public health, that are necessary for maintaining human generation. Whereas the qualitative aspect of human security relates to the human personality that entails individual independency, the right to determine the destiny, and free participation in social life. In fact, human security directs humans to democracy and the opportunity of participation in social decision making in a dynamic and fundamental manner. Regarding the conflict resolution and peace, the gender perspective argues that are several key dimensions taking a gendered approach which is important to peace building and conflict resolution. This approach acknowledges differences in women and men's experiences and ensuring that women's interests and needs are met. And it also recognizes the key roles that women play in peace building and conflict resolution and facilitating those roles wherever feasible. The gendered approach to peace building is perhaps best illustrated by the UN Women, Peace and Security Agenda, United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325, which was adopted in October 2000, which is a landmark document and for the basis of UN Women, Peace and Security Agenda. It is often observed that women appear to have more holistic approach towards peace. Of their participation in the peace processes should not be seen only in context of women as victims of war and conflict, but also women play a proactive role in the process of peace negotiation, peace building, and post-conflict activities following the peace agreement. Now, if we are talking about the conflict resolution and peace, then the role of civil society is also very important in reducing conflicts and facilitating the conditions necessary for building a sustainable peace. In this regard, the performance of civil society towards the protection, monitoring, advocacy, socialization, social cohesion, facilitation, and service delivery in situations of war and armed conflict has a significant effect. Civil society has the capacity to serve a number of key functions in service of democracy and good governance in peace building scenarios. Civil society has the potential to play an important role in regard to democracy and good governance in conflict prone environments. Apart from all those previous aspects, there is an environmental factor too, which is strongly related to conflict resolution and peace. The environmental security has been greatly emphasized by the United Nations, which is itself evident by the Rio Declaration on Environment and Development. in 1992, and it signifies that the global community of states formally acknowledges that there is a connection between peace, human welfare, and environmental protection. Numerous thinkers such as Miche and Brock, Homer Dixon, Konka, Dabelko have mentioned environmental security has a strong correlation with peace, and it should be dealt with environmental security studies and policy. Environmental security and peace have a common intellectual and policy foundation in investigations of the intersection between peace and development, which was highlighted in the 1990s through the works of Galtung, Hackney, and Sorensen. It is observed that environmental factors do not and very unlikely to trigger war between countries. Rather, environmental changes can increase the risk of violent conflict and social instability within countries where governance systems are in transition. Level of inequality are high, and social ecological systems are highly sensitive to environmental change. Peace and environmental security are therefore intimately related, and neither be achieved without the other. At the recent trends of conflicts and conflict resolution are continuing to exert an influence on their nature and extent, and in many ways have been exacerbated by the increasing complexity of the international arena. The upsurge in violence is seen in a volatile global context where the balance of geopolitical power is in flux, and transnational factors like advances in ICT, that is information communication technology, population movements, and climate change create risks and opportunities to be managed at multiple levels. Conflict today is fluid, spreading across borders to affect border regions, a result of the greater interconnectivity of the countries. The global balance of power is shifting. Growing economic power for emerging economies and the achievement by many countries of middle income status brings demand for redistribution of global political influence. It is widely argued that a transition to a multipolar world is underway, with new centers of military and economic power emerging. Violent conflict has regional dimensions, and there has been enhanced regional action in response. However, regional responses have been unseen in their ability to sustain peace. In some cases, regional competition fuels unilateral action, prolonging and aggravating conflicts and weakening the capacity of regional organization to play an important role in the prevention of violent conflict. Lastly, I would like to mention that the goal of peace operations is not military victory, but the conflict is the enemy rather than specific enemy forces. And I would also like to mention that it is definitely the paradox when we talk of conflict resolution and peace while sitting on the throne made up by dynamite and weapons. But as a torchbearer, the social scientist will always chase to bring upon peace and in real sense. So the workshop on conflict resolution and peace research issues and methods will be going to be very interesting session for all the participants, not only for the political science, but all the participants. Thank you.
Thank you, Punita Di, for casting light on the theme of today's workshop. And now I welcome Dr. Preeti Singh, Head Department of Political Science, Vasanta College for Women, and convener of this workshop, to introduce us with our today's inaugural session speaker, our very own Professor Priyankar sir.
Thank you, Manisha. Actually, Priyankar sir doesn't need any introduction, but it is really indeed a matter of great privilege for me to introduce our today's speaker, Professor Priyankar Upadhyaya sir, who has been my teacher, and my initial lessons in conflict resolution and peace research is from sir only. And when we look at his contribution to the field of conflict resolution and peace research, we can say that he is an institution in himself in this field. So presently, sir is serving as the. Am I audible, Manisha?
Yes, yes. You are.
Presently, sir is serving as the UNESCO Chair for Peace at Varanasi University, and he also holds the prestigious Global Fellowship of the Peace Research Institute, Oslo. He has been a recipient of many prestigious awards and fellowships. To name a few, the Scholar in Residence Award of the Woodrow Wilson Center of International Scholars, Washington, D.C., Senior Fulbright Award, and Australia-India Council Senior Fellowship. Sir has also served as visiting professor at U.S. Air Force Academy at Colorado Springs, Concordia University, Montreal, and at the Dublin City University. He also lectures at the Foreign Service Institute and National Defense College in India. He has extensively published in journals and books from reputed publications like Oxford, Manchester University Press, Cambridge University Press, Sage, and Routledge. His volume on peace and conflict, South Asian Experience, which got published from Cambridge in 2015, and Long Walk of Peace Towards the Culture of Prevention, which got published in 2018 by UNESCO. Both these works received international acclaim. He has recently authored a UNESCO-sponsored volume on inter-religious dialogue, good practices and challenges, which is to be published by the UNESCO in coming month. And as his student, I must say that apart from being a researcher par excellence, Sir is an excellent teacher who has motivated and inspired many students to question, to think new, and to think critically. It is a matter of privilege for us, sir. It is our honor to have you with us. So now, without taking much time, I'd like to invite you, sir, for your address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Preeti, Dr. Preeti, if I may, all the Manisha ji, Dr. Manisha, and all the other enthusiastic organizers, and not to miss Professor Alka Singh, whom of course we all know as a very committed and very focused academic in her own right. And of course, the colleagues from DAV College and all the colleagues from DAV College and Vasanta College, Rajghat, so many friends I could see after such a long time. I mean, Dr. Sanjeev, not to miss. And sometimes I was thinking that this has been a very eerie, very strange kind of epoch period, 2 years, 3 years past, and that suddenly we were all in the grip, we were all haunted by the specter of COVID, and praying for each other's welfare and well-being. At the same time, it was not easy to communicate with them and talk to each other and to know about their well-being. So this particular opportunity came very handy to us in the sense that I could know so many colleagues and friends here, and thank you so much. But I think more than that, I'm very pleasantly, I wouldn't say surprised, but I'm very pleased to have two things together. One is the idea of networking. Somehow, having served this university for over 4 decades, one always felt that we need to network, and because that is where our energies are synergized, that is where we are able to contribute and expand our influence zone or the catchment area. And this is, I think, I don't remember that two very distinguished colleges have put their act together. And then they are offering a feast on peace and conflict research. This has been absolutely rare. I mean, as you know, that I have worked, or rather, I have lived and reared and nurtured a Center for Peace Research at Varanasi University, Malviya Center for Peace Research. And so many times one felt that it could have been a great idea if all the academic institutions of Varanasi would come together and work together, because peace is not an ordinary idea. Conflict resolution and peace is not something like a topic in our social sciences, like constitution or governance and election. Peace and conflict resolution is about human survival. Unfortunately, what has happened is, and this is a deeper subject which requires a lot of thinking, a lot of rethinking. Peace is generally seen as something like a luxury, something like an exception, something like acha conflict hai to peace bhi honi chahiye. As one of your colleague also mentioned about the paramount definition of peace as the absence of war. So, you know, peace comes in only when as a stopgap arrangement, as if the perpetual struggle is on, and peace is one exceptional moment, which is, I think, very vicious, which is, I think, very negative understanding of what the human society should think, how we should look at the world around us. And so peace studies call it, there are so many names: peace studies, peace research, conflict resolution, conflict management. So many disciplines and sub-disciplines have grown over the years, over the decades. And having spent almost 4 decades in this area, I think sometimes when I remember somebody started calling me as a pioneer of peace studies in India, I said, what is this pioneer? I feel so ashamed to see that peace studies hasn't really grown in the sense it should. Because after all, you know, like, what is this education and higher education is all about? Is it about simply producing job-oriented courses? Is it simply about producing cogs in the wheel who work in different systems? Or education or higher education is also about changing or transforming the way people look at it. So I think so that gives me great happiness to realize that 2 very distinguished colleges have come together to introduce our young minds and not so young minds about what is happening in the area of conflict resolution and peace research, and also to make them realize that peace is not a luxury. Peace is a necessity. Peace is all about pragmatism. And it's very important for the young generation to know and also to I think, Preeti, we need to ask your computer masters to pin my face on the camera. I'm seeing just your big face on my screen. So just ask him to pin my face, because otherwise, I'm just seeing your face. I mean, I don't mind it. It's very nice, but, you know, I don't know how it can be done. But I think maybe there was some problem in the system. So this is okay, I think.
Now it's okay, sir.
Yeah.
I have pinned you, sir. So
yeah, there was something in the layout, and I couldn't do that. But anyway, let's carry on with this, and let's start today's conversations in a manner that we can do it. Just a minute.
Sir, is it fine at your end? Because we can see your...
I think in my system itself. And speaking about a subject which is so much a passion with oneself, I think I didn't want to distract myself. It's fine, it's good, it's lovely. I think there was some distortion in my system. So I don't know. Somebody
Sir,
says
sir,
you.
there are 3 signs. There is one sign just at the right side of that mic side. If you
Yeah.
can click on that, there are 3 icons. There must be 3 icons on your this thing.
Yeah, there is one. Yeah, present now. Is that the one you're
No,
saying?
no, no, sir. If you
Yeah.
will go on your where your face is visible, so you will find there 3. One is mic symbol,
Uh,
and just before mic symbol, there is one symbol which is pin the symbol of pin. So if you click on that, it will pin there.
minimize, remove this
No,
title. Oh,
no,
all
no.
right. Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, okay.
So this has been a learning, I must say, because sometimes, like if the discussion is within the office time, so my wonderful
Yes.
carer and helpful person, so she does the trick. And today it's past 5 o'clock, so I have to go home. But don't worry, I'll compensate for this little fracture. And thank you so much for making me learn this thing. So back to the question. Congratulations, congratulations, keep it up, because it is the young academics, young teachers, and young students who have to take this spirit forward. And as I was saying in passing, that peace is peace building, conflict resolution, non-violence, ahimsa, whatever name you call it, is not simply one of those things. It is the central need of our time at this point. The way the world is, the powerful people have a sociology, whether it is the global power matrix led by the erstwhile superpowers, currently led by the United States and other countries, Russia, China, that the spirit of militarization, the spirit of this particular aphorism or maxim that war, violence, and security, these are the only concern that the world should feel concerned about. And that is absolutely false, I should say. That's farcical. I mean, consider this, that in the annals of human history, I think the most violent century was the 20th century. And the last 10 years that came after the fall of Berlin Wall or after the Cold War were the bloodiest. And now, as we thought that the world is becoming wiser, there is no Cold War, there is no threat, we have an acute danger of a world war, which of course is not coming because nation states are very selfish creatures. So they just risk it enough. And but then on the other side, if you see that the growth of militarization has gone unhindered, and at the risk of being misunderstood, and please don't, I'll explain why I'm saying this. Even a country of Gandhi has become a very enthusiastic participatory in this whole process. I never argue, for instance, that India should give up arms or India should simply adopt a policy of cowardice and all. But I think globally, whenever I travel and talk to people and understand what they are writing and thinking, there are great expectations from India. In fact, Dr. The earlier speaker was talking about the one who was in why I'm missing her name, wonderful student we had. She was mentioning about Johann Galtung and other scholars. And I have worked with almost practically all of them, very initially starting with John Burton to Johann Galtung and the rest it. And they all seem to admit that they got many of their ideas from India, Indian culture, and especially Mahatma Gandhi. In fact, it was the most famous idea of Johann Galtung, that is structural violence, is a straight takeoff from Mahatma Gandhi's idea of hate the sin, not the sinner. That's how he picked up the idea of structural violence. In fact, it's very interesting, and we can start with little stories. And because I believe in peace studies and peace research and conflict resolution, it's very important to, relate things from your own experience. We often call peace studies, peace research as something experiential. It's not about your mind and calculations. It's about internally, at heart, you feel that you have to save this world from the specter of complete annihilation and violence for your own self and for your future progeny, or your present progeny and the future progeny. So this is an experience that I want to relate, that I think mid-80s, I had the occasion of meeting Johan Galtung, who is attributed as the founding father of peace research. In fact, there is also an interesting story that the feminist scholars got very angry with him because he did not pin much importance to the role of women then. And they attacked him on several grounds, and they said that don't call him as the founding father of peace research, call him one of the fathers. So the idea of this particular discipline having many fathers came into existence. Personally, I believe if one person deserves this title of father of peace studies, father of peace research, father of conflict resolution, then guess what? It's no other but our own Mahatma Gandhi. And when I say this, I'm going to lace what little conversations we have, how Gandhi could foresee shape of things to come. So Johan Galtung, I meet, year 87, I suppose, plays Sweden, and he's a big hero, and we are just beginner. I was simply a lecturer then, very shy, very self-conscious. And we were all introducing ourselves to this great man, Johan Galtung. He's now almost 100, I think 98. I was asking one of my colleague, and he still is alive, and you just Google him and you'll find that he's exceptional. So Johan Galtung asked me, oh, so you are from Varanasi? And I was surprised, oh, this old man knows where Varanasi is. I said, well, I teach there. Of course, I'm from Varanasi in that sense. Then he came close to me and he whispered in my ears that, look, do you know, Varanasi has a lifelong imprint on my, career. And I was surprised. And then he said that his idea of structural violence, the idea that violence is embedded in structures, violence is embedded in structures like family, in caste, in ideologies, and also, by the way, in the territorial states. Gandhi was pretty unhappy with the idea of territorial states. So then Gandhi says, hate the sin, not the sinner. So Johan Galtung was telling me that when he was traveling to Varanasi, to India for a few days, guess where he reached? He spent a week at Institute of Gandhian Studies, which by the way is just next door to Vasanta College, Rajghat. And there he was reading Gandhi again on the bank of the river. And there he read this particular thing as hate the sin, not the sinner. Now, that was a eureka moment for him. He himself said that suddenly so many things came clear before my eyes. Hate the sin, not the sinner. Why? Why not hate the sinner? Because Gandhi was very clear that nobody is born as a violent person, as a terrorist, as anti-nation, anti-planet, anti-so on and so forth. It is these structures that make him what he becomes, a sinful person. And that was the journey of Johan Galtung to create this concept of structural violence. And of course, I'll talk a little bit about other concept that he gave, cultural violence. Why am I saying this? Peace studies, peace research has to be understood in a global context, but it should be rooted in Indian context. The problem with Indian context is that it should not start and end with Om Shanti, 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 or even a empty rhetoric like Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is a great, great idea. In fact, day before yesterday, I delivered a long, single focused lecture on Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam and all the traditions of Upanishad and our ancient texts, the Sufi tradition, the Bhakti tradition, and all the recent stream of sages. Krishnamurti was, of course, there. I mean, we need to read Krishnamurti to find out, to know more about what peacefulness is all about. Sai Baba, Satya Sai Baba, Ravi, Sri Ravi Shankar. These are the people, Brahma Kumaris. We still have multiple streams of thinking and practical activities which tell us so much about peacefulness, about how to build peacefulness. So my urge to this young, wonderful, bright colleagues of ours is and will be to study, not simply, what happens is we live in the world of Michel Foucault, power is knowledge. I mean, you do the Google search, you will come across thousands of statements by John Burton and his human needs theory and Johann Galtung and the whole lot of them. I mean, I know their contribution is immense, enormous. Lettrock, we haven't mentioned John Lettrock. I mean, it's John Lettrock, actually, you should read. And so all these people are there. But the Indian part of the story remains very confusingly mired into some textual references. But then the living practices of togetherness, peacefulness. Our own city, Varanasi, is cited as an example, traditionally, historically. Forget about what is happening in 10, 20, 30 years of past. Before even the modernity came, Varanasi, Banaras used to be a great example of communal confluence. Different communities living together, 3,000 plus temples, 1,500 plus mosques, shrines, Sarnath being there, Kabir Das being there, the Jain Digambar. So, all the religious ideas, cultural ideas used to kind of have a very meaningful medley here, in the sense that they will learn from each other, and you had Bismillah Khan playing flute in a Hindu temple and vice versa. So we need to also, and that will be one interesting way to revive interest, or to, if you see, one of the tragedies of his human rights discourse has been that, when the human rights discourse came, the so-called, what should I say, our own intellectual rejected it's a Western idea. But human rights has to be seen in Indian context. Human security, we use this term, has to be seen in Indian context. So we have to indigenize these concepts. But when we tend to indigenize these things, we don't have to stop with only the ancient text. We have to bring it to Sufi tradition, Bhakti tradition, to syncretic tradition, to Krishnamurti, to all these, as I say, a range of thinkers and contributors who have made India a guru, if not a Vishwaguru, of science of peace. Any peace researcher who works anywhere in the world cannot do without Mahatma Gandhi. Cannot even, even in international relations, the idea of non-alignment, we have disowned it, but the world is still researches on that. So these ideas have to come together. Now, can I request your wonderful computer expert to tell me how can I don't like PowerPoints, but still I thought maybe for the youngsters, how can I get in my PowerPoints here?
So, if you have those slides, here in the downside, there is a present now thing. icon of present now.
Okay. Yes.
But for that, sir, your slide should be open on your desktop.
Yeah. So I say your entire screen?
You can do the entire screen also, or if that window is showing, you can click on that window also, sir.
Okay. I don't know, it's getting a little, actually, honestly, my office computer is all set up for this, and the time being what it is. Okay, let me try your way. So you said that there is...
Firstly, you do one thing, sir. You open the slides on your desktop.
Yeah.
Then if you will go on this present now.
Okay.
Is it showing that window, sir? That slide window?
Present now, yeah.
Yes. Is it showing that window also, that slide window?
No, you see what happens is that I opened it on my, yeah. Oh no. Yeah. And then it doesn't show actually. I can do without it, I think.
You can do one thing. You can send me the slides. I'll do it from my side. If you can send it to me on WhatsApp or, I mean.
Oh, that's going to
that will
take away the... This is the first lecture, and I don't want to come up as somebody. Let me speak to you as clearly and as simply, and we will do this PowerPoint business some other time. So fine. So we have so far in last 10 minutes or 15, I have tried to give a context spontaneously. Now let me share with you what is happening to the academia and how peace studies and peace research is being offered. So in India, we do not have too many centers of peace studies. Malviya Center was the first one established in 1998. It, as you know, many of you know that it offers master's program, PhD programs. The master program is in conflict management and development, because rightfully we thought that the development needs to be brought center stage in the discourse on conflict resolution and peace studies. What is this development? Development is an idea which tells us about the change. So if development is about a directed change, conflict is a part of it, because every time there is a development, there is a change, there emerges incompatibilities, there emerges mismatch, or there emerges differences. So we have this course on conflict management and development at Varanasi in the university. The other place now where we were able to sell it was Jamia Millia Islamia. In fact, they took our slides and courses, and incidentally, that is now being led by Professor Kaushiki, who was our own student. In fact, she was my student here, did her PhD. She is the director of Nelson Mandela Center. And this Jamia also offers a very flourishing master's program on conflict resolution. Other than that, you have some other universities doing it. Like, for instance, Aligarh Muslim University has a program that's not as developed. They still don't, they offer you diploma, etc. And JNU offers you a course. Other than that, we have barrage of institutions which offer Gandhian studies and peace studies. But mostly it's largely about Gandhian ideas. They don't tell us about conflict. They don't tell us about conflict resolution and so on and so forth. In South Asia, the situation is more or less the same. In Sri Lanka has had some very developed center. Pakistan also, a couple of times I also visited Pakistan to know what they are doing for peace studies. Bangladesh has a center. Nepal, Kathmandu University has a developed program on peace and conflict resolution. That's South Asia. But in many parts of developed world, in fact, there is a directory of these such institutions in North America and Europe, and that contains the list of over 1,500 well-developed centers on peace and conflict resolution. But having said that, there is not much of synergy, there is not so much of focus. If you compare peace and conflict centers, conflict resolution centers, to the Security Studies Center or to the Conflict Studies Center, then it's amazing that when you have one peace center, you have 100 centers on security, violence, and defense. And that's because we have, the market loves arms industries, and arms industries constitute one of the major ways in which the world powers have become what they are. In fact, United States alone, over 68% of their industrial gains are through armament industry. And the list also includes the more peaceful Scandinavian countries who sell us all the time the peace ideas. India too is wanting to join the race, Gandhi's country. You produce big arms, big fighters, and it excites. I think, is it something in human nature that we feel very excited about violence and marpeet and dushung. If you look at, one day I took a bet with my students. That time we had these channels coming on screen on the center. Still we have, but I don't know. And one by one, we flashed all the films and all the documentaries that were showing on the channels. And majority of them, somebody was beating somebody. You go to the South Indian film, they are dishing. Indian heroes cannot do without a villain and a 15 minutes or choicey flight, and so on and so forth. And then the big flights, Rafale flying, Mirage flying over, missiles going, and North Korea. And it excites people. Peace doesn't excite people. Is it something in human nature? So long years back, this has been an eternal question actually, that why peace is boring and violence is exciting. Is it that violence and conflict runs in our human blood? Is it some part of our psyche? Many of us actually mistakenly believe that conflict is an inherent part of human nature, especially led by the Hobbesian thinking, Machiavellian thinking. Our own Arthashastra and Chanakya would more or less say like that. Then Hans J. Morgenthau, I think the guru of international relations, he defines international politics as the struggle for power. And he also attributes, and that is the Bible. That's how I started learning about these things, till I started questioning it. I think the questioning part is what made Gandhi what he was. He would question everything. He will not accept a thing unless he is convinced. We tend to begin with certain understanding. We are all violent. Peace se kaam nahi chalega. We have to teach others. How? It's the sociology. In Spain, there is a town known as Seville, as they pronounce it. I've been there and I know. I went there because there was a very remarkable conference that took place there in 80s. And to find out, is conflict, is violence intrinsic? Is it inherent in human nature or not? Pathologist, top Nobel laureates, physiology people, pathology people, sociology people, psychology people, chemistry people, human anatomy people, you name it, all the top people had a very intense workshop. They couldn't find a single evidence to suggest that humans are by nature violent and conflict. Then it's the sociology. When a child is born, he doesn't distinguish between a snake and a rope or a game thing. It's the society that makes him violent. In fact, just a couple of hours back, I was talking to a very young and bright person. I won't name who he was or she was. And he was telling me that, look, the domestic violence has its roots in early childhood. When a very young child sees his father, if not physically bashing, I'm not saying all fathers bash, is the other way around, it happens, but being very harsh and very coercive towards the family. You have to do this. And an image of a protagonist of a man is seen to be one who's in control. So there it begins, say, the making of a psychology, a psyche that, you know, he gets registered, and that's how he treats his own children, his own people, and so on. So these are questions. They are not generalizations. Don't quote me. Don't quarrel with me on this. But the point I'm trying to make, there are still no convincing evidences that humans are, by temperament, violence prone, they are violent, or they are conflict prone. It's not that. Thing is, peace brings such happiness. Just ask yourself one good question. When are you most happy? Somebody will say on Sunday and Saturday, no classes, no rush to the university. And I also love these weekends, still do. Because no work responsibility, no struggle with traffic. But peaceful moments when you are listening to music, you are with the nature, you're finding some young person doing some good things, old person giving you good lectures like I'm doing, maybe, no, maybe not. So peace needs to be placed on par with other emotions. This is not to negate the importance of conflict and violence. In fact, a very nonsensical question of, I know past so many years, whenever I'm on the public fora, people say, oh, tell me what Gandhi would have done on 26/11. They expect an answer. They think that they have made you absolutely speechless. No, that's untrue. The truth is that Gandhi believed that non-violence is the most brave thing a human being can do. And Gandhi, if you ask me, this is a hypothetical question, Gandhi would have taken a gun and shot it. See, you don't read something. People, I remember how many of us have read anything originally written by Gandhi. And he still happens to be Rashtrapita. So don't you want to find out your origin? Don't you want to find out what is the lineage that you came from, this nation? And our public figures know it. They know that nobody has read Gandhi. So Gandhi can be interpreted any which way. Reason being, they have themselves never read Gandhi. And there is not, you don't have to read Gandhi literature. In fact, Gandhi in his whole life wrote just one book. And that was it. But his letters in Harijan, his life was an example. I mean, when I talk to my student, I say, I'm still learning. When I read a little bit about Gandhi, it kind of makes me, it edifies me, it corrects me. And I like his methodology. He questioned everything. And he made mistakes like all human beings do. Do you know, he was very conscious that he can make mistakes. And he says, I'm very willing to change, although people say he was very tough. He wouldn't change soon. But he believed Gandhi's wanton shung, or worldview as you call it, was always subject to certain changes, transformations. I mean, family, he said, I have no family. The whole world is my family. He didn't see a contrast between being a true patriotic nationalist and being an internationalist. No. He made mistakes. All of us do mistakes. But Gandhi has to be understood in terms of his capacity to raise good questions. When I'm asked, sometimes because of my age, or people are kind to me, especially the young students, I remember, like they have these functions of farewell, welcome, etc. And I said, no, I don't. I mean, I'm outdated now. Don't ask me to be there. And then they said, no, say something as a message to us. And then, what I quote? I quote the man who is quite risky person to mention these days, Karl Marx. You have to read Marx's whole biography and history to realize that he was not simply a rogue or a communist. He never predicted a revolution in Soviet Union. He never visited India. So what he wrote about India was also not very appropriate. But a human being, he was a great thinker. So Mahatma Gandhi, they were grand theorists. Hegel, Heidegger, Karl Marx, all these people, you know, like, and a list of people. So don't think that I'm. So Marx, when he returned to University of Berlin, he was asked by his students, you talk so about big things and so on. So tell us one message. And you must be thinking that Marx must have talked about proletariat revolution, dialectical method. No. Marx simply said that one sentence, and I'm translating you verbatim from German. He said that my message to my young students is simple. It is to discover all truths yourself, to discover truth yourself. In other words, don't believe if somebody says that the sun rises in the east. Get up tomorrow morning with a compass and see actually it's east or west, about other communities, about the world at large. We tend to believe what our parents tell us. You know, they are not your enemies, they're lovely people. But not everything they tell you about the world, about religion, about community is true. Discover the simplest of truth yourself. This was Karl Marx to his students. And I'm not a Marxist, but I admire things, whether it is Bertrand Russell or Karl Marx. We have to read these people to realize what they say. I mean, in the similar spirit, if you look at the world today, the other thing that comes to me, and I'm just in a sharing mood because I'm very comfortable, you know, with my wonderful former students who are now big professors in different universities. There was, on my birthdays, my father used to buy me a book, and mostly we would read things in Hindi. I mean, I was not a product of convent or anything, and he was a Sanskrit scholar and with great English, but he wanted me to read things. So there was one book, and I'm sure it's in your library, and I would exhort students to read it or buy it. It was Ramdhari Singh Dinkar. I don't know how many people have heard this name, Ramdhari Singh Dinkar. He was also given the status of a national poet. So that little book, I was very young, and the title of the book was Sanskriti Ke Char Adhyay. 4 chapters of our culture in Hindi, Sanskriti Ke Char Adhyay. And one of the chapters starts with a very interesting thing. He says the problem is not that we know not enough about other religions. The problem is that we don't know about our own religion. See, so this is the society and the world that we live in. Why am I talking all these things is because the conflict and violence begins mostly because of ignorance. Punita, Dr. Punita Pathak.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, no, I'm just mentioning, she mentioned something about the name of John Burton, the Australian professor. He later on worked in George Mason, and great thinker. And he worked 20 years of his life on a project which he called as controlled communication, saying that conflicts take place because of misperceptions. And if we can somehow control communication between the parties, it's a question of what you choose, what you want to look at, beyond media, beyond films, beyond propaganda. And he succeeded, he experimented. I mean, if you Google him, you'll find all those things there. A and B conflictual parties coming together and swapping positions. You become I become you, like the Ubuntu style. And so communication, knowledge, And analysis is the first step of conflict research and conflict resolution. In fact, conflict resolution, I mean, there is a big debate. Some people say that conflicts are innate to human nature, and they say that conflict is a part of, societal and human nature. It will never go. It will never be resolved. And therefore, they said that conflict should be managed because conflicts are going to be with us. But they don't tell you that conflict as such is not good or bad. Conflict only refers to incompatibilities. You know, incompatibility. Hindi में उसको कह सकते हैं विसंगतियां. Mismatch. When I was very young, there used to be an advertisement, a program made for each other. So they would show the couples who are made for each other. You know, in real life, it doesn't happen. No, we are never made for each other. We have to develop ways to iron out those incompatibilities. So conflict is only about incompatibilities within interpersonal, intergroup, interstate and international situations. आप कहीं जाना चाहते हैं, दूसरा कहीं जाना चाहता है. अब आप देखिए, for example, Ukraine, what is the issue? I mean, first of all, we all need to keep in mind that these territorial borders are hardly 400-500 years ago. They were there. Westphalia Treaty, that's what we teach. Well, some people have discussions there, immemorially fine. Nations, of course. Bharatvarsh was a nation, a great entity, and we all love it. Wherever our influence was, it was a nation. But territorial states, the territories were carved out only recently. So incompatibilities, I mean, in case of Ukraine, for instance, you see, it became a part of Soviet Union. Soviet Union got disintegrated. Many countries of the erstwhile Soviet bloc, they got independence. And when the Cold War comes to an end, there was an understanding that NATO will go and we live very peacefully. I remember, I don't know, even before you guys, Preeti and Punita, were in MA Masters, I used to, it's very interesting. One day I was looking back and thinking that how my own, earlier I used to teach international relations before this in political science department, before the Peace Center was established. And I remember there was a time that Ronald Reagan was the president, and the Russians, the Soviets had started making their own multiple independent, some missile Star Wars thing. And Reagan comes out to say that be prepared for nuclear winters. Was it when? 80s? I think so. And I remember I went to my teaching class and I was so emotional to my students. I said, I don't know where we'll meet, what we'll do to your degrees. Nuclear winters would come, we'll all die. From there, Cold War comes to an end. I go to my class and say, congratulations, celebrate. Epidemic of peace has come. Ab watan azad hai, ab koi gulshan na ho. We are very peaceful. Then Cold War has become now, the Cold War has gone, but we are at the most difficult period of human civilization and survival. So in case of Ukraine, incompatible position, Putin wants Ukraine not to become a part of NATO. Now, independently, Ukraine people think that who is this man, Putin, madman? Why should he want us to join this and that? But you see, you also have to see, this is where the analysis begins. NATO was created in the context of Cold War to kind of support its allies in Europe. Just 15 countries were there in NATO, which was established in 1949, yes. And after 6 years, Warsaw came. 15 countries and now 30 countries are there. So Putin doesn't want Ukraine to join, good or bad. The Americans can't stop. These are incompatible positions. You need a John Burton here. You need a conflict. So bring them together. That is the challenging thing. How do you bring these opponents on the table? See, अपने जिंदगी में भी आप देखिए, sometimes more or less you, your spouse, your children, your friends, your colleagues, you are on the same page, but there is a communication gap. Somebody might think, oh, Dr. Preeti Singh is, wanting to take my paper. Now, why does she think that he wants to take my paper? Somebody says, the challenge is the communication. We don't have good communication, good skills to communicate, and then it becomes difficult for people to get away with those communication. So conflict is about incompatibilities. These incompatibilities are natural. सब लोग एक जैसे नहीं बने होते. We need to learn to handle these incompatibilities. That is the message of conflict resolution. How do we handle these incompatibilities? एक बड़ी interesting चीज है. Gandhi was very fond. I mean, read Gandhi again. I mean, there are very nice commentaries on Gandhi. Come to Peace Center. You can issue them book with my little. I still have that influence, and read them. Very wonderful. It's not simply wo mahan the, nahi. It's about how he looked at conflict. Gandhi used to celebrate conflict. He would say कि जहाँ conflict है वहाँ मोहब्बत है. See, he could see one thing very clearly, that conflicting parties must have relationship with one another. Does it not happen? You don't know somebody. People hate this anonymity. ये हमको जानते ही नहीं है. डॉक्टर मनीषा हमको नहीं पहचानती, कौन है? आप बदतमीजी करिए तो आपका पता करेंगे, अच्छा ये साहब सत्यवान जी हैं, यहाँ डीएवी के अध्यापक हैं या स्टूडेंट हैं. तो when conflict comes, what happens is that you start finding out who the person is. और इसीलिए हम लोग अपनी जुबान में, in our own parlance, often times we used to say कि अरे भाई जो रिलेशनशिप झगड़े से शुरू होती है वो बड़ी पक्की होती है. आपने सुनी ना कि आप झगड़ा करते हैं कोई रिलेशनशिप में तो वो आपकी रिलेशनशिप बहुत चलती है, क्योंकि आप एक दूसरे के बारे में बहुत सी चीज जान लेते हैं. अरे ये यहाँ का रहने वाला है, अच्छा हमारी ताई जी के साथ है, हमारे मोहल्ले में रहता है. Not always. So this is a point. See, conflict has to be seen as some kind of a natural process, and that's how, in fact, one of the classic book that came very close to getting a Nobel Peace Prize was written by a scholar from Northern Ireland, John Darby, and the title of the book was "What's Wrong with the Conflict?" Conflict में क्या खराबी है? Conflict is common, natural, normal, inevitable, and often creative. Conflict को creative भी कहा गया. एक सोशियोलॉजिस्ट थे, उन्होंने फंक्शनल और डिसफंक्शनल कॉन्फ्लिक्ट की बात की कि भाई कॉन्फ्लिक्ट हमेशा खराब नहीं होता है. कॉन्फ्लिक्ट इज इंट्रिंसिक टू सोशल चेंज, बिकॉज कॉन्फ्लिक्ट होगा तो बदलाहट होगी. Challenge is how to prevent conflict from becoming dysfunctional or violent, and that is where the difference of conflict and violence begins. तो आज से हम लोग अपनी जुबान में conflict celebration है. I remember once again a childhood experience. अगर आप हमारे साथ peace studies पढ़ते तो I used to give this example. See, try to, as teachers, I'll tell you, give real examples from your life. Only day for yesterday, I thought एक नई चीज याद आई हमें हॉस्टल लाइफ की, बट आज हम आपको कुछ और दूसरा एग्जांपल बताते हैं. I was very young. We were raised on a university campus in Madhya Pradesh, and my father was a kind of disciplinarian. Gandhian थे, strong personality. और बड़े नाराज रहते थे कि तुम्हारे घर से लड़ाई झगड़े की बहुत आवाज आती है. उधर देखो डॉक्टर लाल के यहाँ, there was a professor of some science subject, वहां से चूं की आवाज नहीं आती, which is a fact. किसी की न रोने की न मार. हम लोग सोचते थे कि लाल के यहाँ से लोग आते हैं, एक लाइन से आते हैं, एक लाइन से जाते हैं. It was a very mysterious thing. One day I remember I think I must be 7-8 years or something. Even it took me time to thresh out what actually transpired. तो डॉक्टर लाल के यहाँ से 2 घर छोड़ के रहते थे. Suddenly one day I saw ambulance and police coming in, And then, like you heard your parents, your senior people whispering in each other's eyes. And then we got to know that Mrs. Lal had committed suicide, Atmahatya. And then very next day, her daughters created a scene and they also fled from the house. And then it took me years to realize that Dr. Lal ke yahan peace nahi thi. Oh, it was a piece of graveyard. He was an authoritarian, dictatorial person who wouldn't allow anybody to dissent, to disagree, to speak. What am I trying to say? So, peace is celebrating the difference, allowing others to say things and accepting them. It's not simply the absence of any dissenting sound and so on and so forth. So this is something that we need to begin to teach our students in political science or in life. If nothing else, your children, if they listen to you, they don't these days. They are doing JRS and they want to do big things, whatever. Sorry. So conflict and differences, incompatibilities are a part of all societies, and that's where a good society, a good community life should be. A challenge of conflict resolution, conflict management, peace research is how to ensure that these conflicts do not assume violent overtones. Incidentally, in peace research and conflict resolution, we don't make a distinction between international conflicts and domestic conflicts or family conflict. And if you see, you were talking about, Dr. Pathak was mentioning, it was a very nice actually summary of what is available on peace research. But as I said, that is mostly written by the Western scholars. They are great people, but we have to lace it through our own experiences, and probably more of Indian cultural perspectives would add to the verve of the particular presentation. So we need to emphasize to our students that, look, we are studying peace research and conflict resolution. Why? Because we want a society where differences are there, but not all differences become or lead to a violent situation. Now, challenges, people say, well, it's very simple to say, but there are issues of justice, social justice, for example. See, the most important challenge is this. And remember this, especially, there are also, I find, a lot of teachers and students. Don't believe in concepts, in notions that are dished out to you by the East or West or South or not. Gandhi, Nehru, present regime, past regimes. Check them. I'll give you a very interesting example. If I'm to ask an inexposed set of students as to what peace is, the ready-made answer is peace is the absence of violence, as was mentioned earlier. Peace is the absence of violence, war, battle, etc. Very simply, peace is the absence of war or violence. If in binary terms we put it differently, have you ever heard that war is the absence of peace or violence is the absence of peace? Certainly not. And that's the clue, because this knowledge is dished out to us that aggression, militarization, teaching a lesson is the only way, and peace is an exception. Peace is an exception. No, that's not true. If peace is not the permanent state of relation, then at least war and violence is also not. So we need to question them. Why can't we say war is the absence of peace? People are generally peaceful. And they don't want to get into a fight situation, marpeet ki situation. Why do we not say it? So there, an alternative discourse is needed. That alternative discourse has been given to us by a range of people, by Buddha, by Mahavir Jain, by Mahatma Gandhi, by our Upanishad. Why should we believe Vasudev Kutumbakam? We सभी दुश्मन है, सब पाकिस्तान दुश्मन, चीन दुश्मन, सिंगापुर दुश्मन, सब कुछ सबक सिखाना. Nobody says दूसरा गाल भी दे दो, but understand, try to understand what Gandhi said. You know, today that's a precipice moment. The whole human civilization is at a very risky kind of point. You know, one has to use, these studies are suppressed, but thousands of times the whole world came very close to the Third World War, and that would have meant complete annihilation of human civilization. Nothing would have been meant. I mean, recently, by accident, missile of country A landed in missile B, country B. Now, it was an accident. Everybody knows it was not intentional. But suppose country B, knowing that country A is not very happy with them, would have fired a real missile on you, you were done with. You know, so those people who say that, well, armaments, battles and wars are for self-defense, they are making a, unfortunately, maaf kariyega, fool of themselves and fool of all of us. Weapons are meant to be used, and they are very costly, very costly. On Facebook, I don't do Facebook, but somebody sent me a message. It was so moving that I wept. You wouldn't believe. There was a young girl, very young, beautiful girl, somewhere in Afghanistan or Syria, Ukraine. And a person, sitting on the truck is asking her, "Did you have breakfast?" And she's smiling and said, "No, I didn't have breakfast." "Did you sleep?" "No, I didn't sleep." "Where is your father? Where are your parents?" "They died in the war." This young girl is looking at her. My war is very costly. You have to imagine, both of you, DAV College and Rajghat, they are very established colleges. Took hundreds of years to, resources are there. The cost of these two, creating one such college is 1/10 of a warplane that gets destroyed every now and then. So I'm not against defense. Listen, I'm not against security. I mean, you might have noticed that I am one of those very exceptional professors, even of political science and international relations, I challenge, who is invited to teach National Defense College, Air Force Academy, Naval War College. So I know both the sides. I'm not one of those style Om Shanti Shanti Jai Ho, no. But security, I remember one time when National Human Rights Commission was formed, there was Justice Venkat Chalaiya. He's no more with us. Justice Venkat Chalaiya. And I remember my young mind, I was very young and very tender. And I remember he ended his task by making a classic statement. And he said that frontiers are important. Frontiers means borders are important. किसी भी देश के लिए उसके frontiers important हैं, बहुत important. And then he said, but the frontiers of human dignity are also important. एक रिक्शे वाले को जब आप पीटते हैं, मारते हैं, मुझे याद है कि मैं जब 40-42 साल पहले मैंने ज्वाइन किया और ये एक बहुत मारपीट चलती थी, तो हॉस्टल के बच्चे जो थे, they were kicking a रिक्शा वाला. I asked them, क्यों मार रहे हो? Then they said कि ये कहता है कि वहाँ नहीं जाएंगे. हमने कभी सोचा उसको भूख लगी हो, नहीं जा. They were hitting him so badly. There is so much of violence that is embedded in our blood, but this is not makes you a human being. So we need to address this particular thing. Why is it, recently there was this there was a talk by somebody and somebody said कि इस बार हो जाए दोनों तरफ से. There's no doubt that Pakistan has been treated and looked upon as a rogue state. State, yes, people, they're lovely people. People to people, people are, human beings are one and the same. So let's not go there. But state, yes, it's a rogue state right now. Bad situation. No friend of ours. But the argument was that Pakistan, मैंने कहा कि ठीक है भाई, this is the time to settle. I said, look, I'll give you a scenario. Pakistan launches 10 missiles to India, and India, with its tremendous capacity, intercepts all the missiles, and one of them actually falls in Lahore. Then the friend got excited, बोले साले सब मर जाएंगे. मैंने कहा कि look, do you realize what would happen to most of the cities of northern India if the Pakistani nuclear missiles falls on Lahore? Lahore is finished. But what happens to Chandigarh? What happens to Delhi? I said, we are all tied up. We are all tied up. You don't require a Kalpana Chawla to tell us that it's a one little green ball that we made our territories, we made our armies, we are fighting with each other. I mean, look at the poor Ukraine. It's fighting and then still not giving up. And it's a better, you see, we need to change the mindset of humans. And this is precisely what the preamble of UNESCO tells us. I don't know, this is, I think, a general knowledge question, so all of us would know this. And since the wars begin in the minds of humans, it is in the minds of humans that the defenses of peace should be built. And that's the reason why you should teach peace and conflict studies. Peace and conflict studies tell us about so many things. We had an excellent paper presentation initially, about the seminar, and I think the upcoming scholars are really, really very remarkable. So they will tell you a lot about it. But we tell students, look, absence of violence is just direct violence is negative concept. Positive peace is creating those situations. We tell them about positive peace, structural violence, cultural violence. We tell them that also, we remind them that Gandhi was very particular that a teacher going late to the class is also a violence. Somebody asks, hey, what about the students if they come late? That is also a violence. So we have to develop a much broader sense of what violence is, and that can be done if we tell them about the difference between direct violence, structural violence, and cultural violence. One simple way in which I used to teach, still do, if you say that children are killed in a war, that's direct violence. But if you say that children die through poverty, famine, that is structural violence. And when you say that, well, that's a different thing, oh, famine mein mare, wo violence nahi hai, that is cultural violence. And along with this, and this is very important for all of us to remember and use it, there's a routine violence. Gyanendra Pandey, हमारे एरिया के बहुत अच्छे हिस्टोरियन हैं, संजीव वगैरह उनको पढ़ते रहे होंगे सभी लोग. He is given this idea of routine violence. भाई पड़ोस से मारने की आवाज आ रही है, वो बीबी को मार रहा है, आप कह रहे हैं कि साहब वो तो उनके घर की बात है. I remember, this is once again personal experience. We had a carer, somebody who supported our household. And once we got married, we went to his village for celebration, ho raha tha, gaye wahan. And the next house, there was a woman who was constantly crying. And I asked him, क्यों? बोले सर कुछ नहीं कर सकते, इसका आदमी आता है, जैसे ही आता है वो मारना शुरू कर देता है शराब पी के. ये कुछ नहीं कर सकते. ये कल्चरल वायलेंस है. Somebody is beaten up. People of other caste, other communities, they are beaten up, they are burned to death. आप celebrate कर रहे हैं, साला मर गया. Sorry about this. But, this is the kind of cultural violence that we need to make our students conscious about it. And double standards on violence is something, so there are a lot of things which are available. And I'm sure the succeeding speakers would do a better job of it. There are multiple approaches to build peace. There is a multi-track approach. सिर्फ गवर्नमेंट्स की चीज नहीं है, गवर्नमेंट टू गवर्नमेंट डायलॉग हो गया. देयर आर ऑल्सो डायलॉग बिटवीन पीपल, प्राइवेट सिटीजन्स, religion. You know, one of the, might have noticed that past 2 years I have really worked hard and brought together hundreds of examples, experiences and understandings of interreligious dialogue. Why? Because today I think religion is one single source of violence. But this religion also, we don't have to give up on that. We have to look at the positive sides of it, the instances, the experiences of interreligious understanding and harmony. This is another. So this peace building has become, lastly, before we close, let me tell you, you know, United Nations is more sinned against than sinning, to use this Lady Macbeth's famous line, in the sense that people think that United Nations is good for nothing. What is United Nations? United Nations is a reflection of the member states. शीशा है जनाब आपका. आप वहां जाके अपनी, it's represented by not you and me. Although I had a chance of going to General Assembly year before last and speak there, there's also a very strong surge of ordinary NGOs and people to go there, but they are not given the private thing is India, Pakistan, China, states. It's a club of states, some people call it, but poor United Nations kya kare? But I will highly recommend, read the annual statements by the United Nations Secretary General. He may be a person who is not everybody's choice, because so Secretary General ko bhi aap, you know, you cannot appoint him unless you have the support of the more powerful countries like the United States. But see, United Nations position, they came out with this idea of sustainable development goals. I recommend all teachers of social sciences to give very focused understanding of sustainable development goals to their students. The earlier work that I did, you know, conflict prevention, is available on net. Just click it, you know, Long Walk of Peace. We try to show that peace building incorporates everything. UNICEF भी शामिल है, WHO भी शामिल है, UN Women भी शामिल है, because peace is about everything. Peace is not simply about the guns getting silent. No, peace is about good health. Peace is about respect for women. Peace is about good condition of children. Peace is about everything. Sustainable Development Goals. Goal 16 is about peace, inclusive society and justice. There is a straight annotation that if there is no justice, there is no peace. If the societies are not inclusive, that's not peace. Let's not call it peace. And all these goals, first goal, पॉवर्टी. सारे झगड़े की जड़ तो पॉवर्टी है. आप असहाय हैं, आप चोरी करेंगे, मार खाएंगे. Goal 3, climate. Goal 4, Goal 4 is education, human rights. All these things are interlinked. The latest definition or latest understanding, and I would recommend each one of you to Google it and read it, is idea of sustaining peace. Sustaining peace, not sustainable peace. No. Sustaining peace is about linking, as I think Dr. Pathak also initially mentioned, peace with development and human rights. It's a holistic thing. If any statesman makes a fool saying कि साहब हमारे यहाँ झगड़ा नहीं हो रहा है, सब शांति है, कोई बोल नहीं रहा है, कोई बाहर से नहीं आ रहा है, कोई इंडिया पाकिस्तान नहीं हो रहा है, कोई चाइना नहीं हो रहा है, कोई यूक्रेन नहीं हो रहा है. So, it doesn't mean that there is peacefulness in the society. So one of the ways in which sustaining peace was linked with sustainable goals was through the trajectory of sustaining peace, the UN Agenda of 2030, as we call it. Now, That's where the buck stops. From the original understanding of peace being statist, state-centric. Peace is the absence of war. Why was it said? In this world, when these territorial states emerged, there was this notion that once the space, the territorial space which contributes to the making of a nation state is there, their governments, their regime will look after their citizens and there will be peace. Jaise ki, I'm very fond of saying it at the front of people who don't like this bilingual thing. I can speak better in Hindi, that's my mother tongue. कि एक ज़माने में ये चलता था कि साहब अब वतन आज़ाद है, अब कोई गुलशन ना उजड़े. So this was the prevalent ideology, that you are free because threats will come only from outside. कोई बाहर वाला आपको कुछ करेगा तब आपको आपकी पीस खतरे में पड़ेगी. What transpired in course of post-war period, post-Second War period, was a development that was very shocking. That most of the violence perpetuated was from within the states. We had this classic and very tragic case of Rwanda. 90 days, 8 million people gone. Sudan, I don't know how many people take care because we bother only about our college, about university, our city, our mulk at the best. Who is dying in Pakistan, Indonesia, Rwanda is not our. Sudan, over 2 million people have lost their lives. In fact, by a reckoning, since the end of Cold War, over 1.7 million people have lost their lives in wars that were not interstate. Tutsi ko chhod dijiye, itna violence hai. It's very difficult to keep a calculation. And then capital. Our lack of awareness about the positive actions, the positive developments. For example, how many of us know that a very dedicated group of civil society activists successfully campaigned to get a favorable vote in the United Nations on right to peace? How many of us know? Ask yourself. It didn't show in Dainik Jagaran, or even Hindu didn't mention Times of India. We don't know. There was no program, no publicity, no social media. Right to peace was passed by the General Assembly, that people have a right to peace. Another similar resolution was passed declaring nuclear weapons as illegal. And the NGO that spearheaded this particular initiative was given Nobel Peace Prize. But I bet you don't know. Give peace a chance. Your country might become the most powerful country, our country, lovely. That's fine, that's good. But we have to survive till then. And for that, we need to know more about peace building, contribute more effectively about peace building and conflict resolution. And for those of you who think ki bhai badi baatein humko naukri chahiye, see, peace studies, you do a paper, it gives you a transformative alternative. You're appearing for the examination, you will write differently, different to other students, and if the examiners are good, which basically sometimes they are not, sometimes they will give you better marks. But if you pursue it as a career, as a master's program from BHU, from Jamia or elsewhere, you also have a great potentials and possibility of finding a space, finding a position in some international NGOs, in some rehabilitation work. Many of the students have done it. The number is less. But then how many of us just by political science MA are getting a job? No. This is an interesting field for us to teach, to learn. There is a lot that is happening And there are a lot of things that you can relate. And if nothing else in the final, let me tell you, by studying conflict resolution and peace studies, at least has helped me personally. बहुत नाराजगी नहीं होती. It's a question of identity. जब कुछ बातें होती हैं तो आदमी, see, conflict resolution is about analyzing the situations. You analyze it. आप identity, recognition, security, आप सोचिए कि if somebody's identity is threatened by your presence, he feels insecure. Why does it happen? नाराजगी नहीं होती, कम होती है मतलब. You can question yourself. A lot of good things can happen to you. End of the day, an old man is telling you that it enriches your life's understanding. And if at all life has any purpose, it is this, that you develop a much wider vision, focus to know about life. And peace and conflict research gives you that alternative perspective. So thank you very much to the organizer, to the two colleges, their principals, and to the friends. I'm really very, very pleasantly surprised to see that there are over 100 participants are there, even if presuming that 70% are there just by name and they're doing other things. I don't mind that. But in the normal webinars, etc., it's very hard to find people. So thank you very much. We have other colleagues coming in from my center and other centers of peace studies, and good luck and all very best. We can have questions or comments or whatever after this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. We are very grateful for your such an enlightening, thought-provoking and brainstorming session. Now for formal vote of thanks, I invite Dr. Swati Sucharita Nanda Madam, Convener and Assistant Professor, Department of Political Science, DAV Postgraduate College, Varanasi. Over to you, Swati ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Manisha. Very good evening to everyone present. I think each participant would agree with me that the session today with Professor Priyankar Upadhyaya sir has not only been very engaging, but also been an enlightening one. We all have known sir not only as the creator and nurturer of Malviya Center for Peace Research, the MCPR in BHU, but also as the pioneer of modern peace studies in India. Sir, I take this opportunity to express gratitude on behalf of both the organizing institutions, Vasanta College, Rajghat, and DAV Postgraduate College, for your gracious presence here and for sharing your knowledge on peace research with our students. So we are certain that this act of generosity on your part is going to inspire many of our students who have participated today to take up conflict resolution and peace research in their future academic pursuits. Thank you so much, sir. I would also like to thank Professor Alka Singh, ma'am, Honorable Principal, Madam of Vasanta College, and Professor Satyadeep Singh, sir, Honorable Principal, sir, of DAV Postgraduate College, for making this collaborative workshop possible. Thanks are also due to the faculty members from political science departments of both the colleges and other departments. And last but not the least, I would also like to extend my thanks on behalf of each of the faculty members present here towards all the students of Vasanta College who have participated, from DAV College, who have participated from BHU, as well as other universities who have participated and who have stayed with us right from the beginning till the end of the session. Thank you so much, everybody. And now over to Dr. Manisha for the next session. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Swati Di, for your thanksgiving, and you have definitely encouraged us that we can also go for such an collaboration in near future. Thank you very much, sir. Over